Welcome to RELaunch, the real estate podcast focused on helping you find your success in real estate. My name is Lorne Cooper. I am an active real estate sales representative just north of Toronto, Canada. The whole purpose of this podcast is to bring you actionable content by interviewing the best of the best in this business, helping to take you from zero to hero in your real estate career. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the RELaunch Podcast. That is the Real Estate Launch Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. Of course, every week we have special guests, but this one is extra special and magical. Today, we welcome Mike Heddle. How are you, Mike?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me. You've set some expectations. They're magical. That's going to be an interesting expectation you've set for your listeners.
Well, I thought you had a top hat in the background, that you could pull out and maybe some magic wand. No? Okay. All right. Well, we're going to get started on some real stuff anyway. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are and where you're located and what your business looks like today?
Yeah, sounds good. So I'm located in Hamilton. We cover a pretty big geographical area, really from Burlington, around the western part of Lake Ontario, into markets like Dundas, Ancaster, Stony Creek, and Grimsby. So we do cover a fairly large geographical region, and I'm a team leader. That there's 5 licensed agents, and our admin side is growing a little bit. We've just brought on a full-time marketing coordinator. I'm with Royal LePage State Realty. We're fortunate to be awarded some pretty interesting awards within the industry. We had a big year last year with almost 300 transactions. So we do this every day of the week. We breathe, eat, and sleep real estate. We're full-time agents and love what we do.
Fantastic. So why don't you tell me a little bit about how you got in the business or what you were doing before you even got in the business? Tell me a little bit about little Mikey.
Yeah, so I stumbled into the industry, I guess, like most of us have, and I'm also very fortunate. I often say this. I grew up in a great environment. Both parents were working professionals in the medical industry, and came from a lineage. My grandfather was a GP, my father was a surgeon. So there were expectations, you would think, for many people as to following that path and getting into medicine. And interesting, my father said to me, "Don't get into medicine. Medicine in Canada isn't what it used to be." So we spent some time looking at some offshore investment opportunities in Panama. This would have been about 2002. And I fell in love with the idea of thinking of developing internationally or looking at real estate. And I came back, was finishing my last year of university at McMaster, and thought, how else do I learn about real estate other than get my real estate license? So my 4th semester studying economics and commerce, I started with the REA courses and started getting licensed and, began selling into real estate, thinking that at one point in life I'd be an international real estate developer. I don't even know if that title exists, but it was a dream in my 20s and, really loved selling and that's what we do now. So
fantastic. So OREA, just for people that are listening that don't know, is the Ontario Real Estate Association. So that's where you take your courses to get licensed in Ontario.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So continue.
Got into the business probably much like most of you, not really knowing what to do. So my background was very numbers oriented. I had a degree in engineering and economics. And prior to that, actually, I got accepted into to Sheridan College. This is going back to a time when animation was big. They just got a huge injection in their animation program from Disney. So I spent a month in one of their semesters thinking I wanted to be an animator. I had this real creative component to me that I realized it's not what I want to do. I put down my pencil and dove into numbers. So it's been an interesting mix where I've got this creative element, but like diving into the numbers, and we'll fast forward into why we work with investors, et cetera. But as I got my license, I really wasn't sure where to start. And I think you heard me tell this story. I haven't told it to many people because I was embarrassed of it for the longest time. My first phone call awoke me. I was spending time at my parents over the holiday season, and my phone rang. I was a licensed realtor. My phone rang, and I thought, here it is, my first client. And the person on the other end of the line, said, "Hi, is this Mike Heddle? I'm looking to sell my home." And boy, I jumped out of bed and scrambled to find a notepad, only to hear my sister burst into laughter on the other end of the phone playing a prank on me. And it was at that time that I truly realized my phone's not just going to ring. I have to do something to make it ring. I have to set up these affiliations, or what I call feeders, into referring us business. And that was a big eye opener for me. And I held it against her for years, and now I thank her for it. So
that's cruel. That's very cruel, for sure. Because I remember what it's like in those early days, and you're waiting and waiting, and then you get a call, and it's your sister.
Yeah. Yeah. So starting, I guess some advice I could give, and, starting that my first step, and I do this with a lot of our agents, our onboarding system, is really starting with your center of influence. To me, there's 3,300 realtors in the Hamilton Burlington board. People aren't going to call you, I don't think, because they like your photo on the sign or because you're number one. This is a people business, and our clients, I believe, use us because we're competent and because they trust us, and we build a lot of rapport. So, to me, the starting point was building out that center of influence, people I know, and just informing them, advising them that, I'm getting into the industry. And I'll give my father-in-law a lot of great credit. He had a database back then, and he said, yeah, why don't you, I'll send a letter, from himself introducing you as my daughter's boyfriend at the time, that you're getting into real estate. And that's really where I started, was working that center of influence. And to this day, we really focus hard on the people we know, our center of influence, not only with myself and in our region, but as we onboard new sales partners, that's our first step.
Okay, so let's dive into that a little bit. When you first got your license, how long was it before you started doing some deals, and were they from your center of influence?
Yeah, they certainly were. So, we've all got these stories of remembering our first sale. Mine was actually a FSBO that was a friend of a family member that, had me out to appraise his property, and he didn't like my price, so he tried to sell it for sale by owner. He had went and gone and purchased a home firm with a broker, and really called me with about 2 weeks to go and said, I'm in trouble. I need you to sell my home. And interestingly, we sold it for the penny, down to the penny, what I told him it was worth. And from that moment on, I was him and his family's advisor. But, so I think it probably took me about 3 to 4 months to get my first transaction in the loop. I was working, I kind of entered, like most of us do, part-time. It's frightening to take that jump in and not know when your first commission check or your income is going to come in. So it probably took me about 3 to 4 months to secure and get involved in my first transaction. And that was in 2005. I was first licensed, and kind of worked my way into the industry as a part-time agent, like a lot of people do.
So when did you transition from part-time to full-time?
So it was about 2008, 2007, 2008. So I'd also just finished school, getting my degree, and wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and tried a few things. And I think it was about 2008 that I thought, I'm going to do this. I'm now beginning to get a bit of a name, or people know that I'm in the business, but it was really frustrating early on. I find this an interesting business. Although people want to trust you, and you spend time building that rapport with them, people also, you want to use the top agents, those that are competent, those that they see their billboards everywhere. So I can remember the early days being really frustrated when friends or family, I've heard that they bought or sold a home and they didn't call me. And I took it personal back then too. Now I don't. I realize that, some people just don't like doing business with family members or friends, et cetera. But, there's been a direct correlation between what I'll call production or influence within the industry and the confidence that my center of influence now places in me.
Right, definitely. So when you were talking about working your sphere of influence or your center of influence, you're bringing on your team members, you're teaching them how to do that. How did you do it, and how are you teaching your team members how to do that today?
Yeah, our practice and even the industry's changed quite significantly in that time frame. One of the things that we do as a team leader and as a team is provide an immense value proposition for our sales partners. So, the industry and the formation of teams recently, it's become really difficult to do everything, I believe, nowadays as an individual agent. It's tough to prospect and be out on showings and be an expert negotiator and handle the back end side of the business with, the accounting and it's really, the whole industry has quite changed significantly. Even things like Facebook and, instant gratification that many clients have. So to go back into how we started that, or how I started doing that, I just started to drip. I heard a great saying that really stuck with me, and I find myself telling the team members, I want your center of influence to think about you in their sleep. Now, I say that in a good way. By that, I mean, I want them, when they think real estate, I want your name to pop up first. So it's amazing. I mean, we have a great market share in this region, but when I see people I haven't seen in a year or two, they'll say to me, I see you everywhere. That's not the case. We just do a really good job at subtly, putting our brand and putting our image in front of our center of influence.
So are you doing that through local marketing and advertising, or through direct pieces, like through direct mail or email?
Yeah, so we've actually really pulled back from, you don't have any billboards. We used to have bench signs. We don't use any bench signs, don't use much print media from the standpoint of our local newspaper. We've really done a good job at doing it through, drip campaigns in email. We're leveraging social media so that, people aren't just seeing our posts on our feeds, but, they're seeing us subconsciously, I'll call it. We do things where within the team, I've got a mandate, you've got to call your center of influence twice a year. Just talk to them. Sure, our product that we sell is real estate, but this is a people business. And our clients, again, I truly believe they use us because we're competent. That's the first and foremost. But more importantly, they trust us.
So you're reaching out to your center of influence at least twice a year, and you're just calling them up and saying, hey, how's it going? It's been a little while. Is there anything I can help you with?
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe if they have some renovations happening or something like that.
I'll give you a great script. Hi, it's Mike Heddle calling. It's been a while since I've heard from you. You're probably seeing a lot of what's going on in real estate in the news lately. Just wondered if you had any questions about the market, or even just wanted an idea of what your home might be worth today. I mean, people love to talk about real estate, don't they? You see it all the time. We all do. It's a hot topic at dinner parties. And when somebody knows that you're in real estate, it's an easy conversation. Most of us have a home or rent and live in a home. It's a very relatable product that we sell.
Yeah, definitely. And when it's in the news as often as it is here, then it's definitely on the top of most people's minds. Okay, yeah. Great. So you're reaching out to your center of influence. Now, I know that you have an interesting business model, a little bit different than most realtors and real estate teams. Why don't you talk about kind of where your sources of business come from other than center of influence?
Sure. I'll go back to that embarrassing story that I told about my sister. That really was, now as I looked upon it, it was an aha moment. I realized I needed to put relationships in place with entities or partners that kept sending us business. And let me start by saying you only get that if you're competent and know what you're doing. So it's even more difficult sometimes to have people that you trust or build these networks, as you're new to the business, but there's a starting point. So we have about what I'll call 4 or 5 different feeders into our business. So we do work with one of Canada's largest investment networks, whereby I'm in front of them and the team's in front of them quite frequently. We're teaching Main Street investors how to invest in income properties and use different strategies, whether it be student rentals or, a flip to yourself sort of strategy. So that's one part of the business that represents about 30% of the transactions that we do. We've got a relationship with a developer. So this gives us a capacity to sell new homes, but also farm those neighborhoods once the communities have been built. And that also represents about a third of our business, 20 to 30% of our business. We put a program in place with one of our large institutions, the Hamilton Health Sciences and McMaster University. So this was actually the first relationship I put in place because of some of those doors or connections that I had open to myself, which didn't make it any easier, by the way. I mean, it was put in front of me that, I have high expectations. If I'm going to open this door, you better deliver. Right. So we handle any relocation for any new faculty member for the Hamilton Health Sciences and McMaster University. And then our resale part of the business is quite large as well. So those are really the 4. There's been a spin-off from that within a referral network. Primarily, we see a lot of referrals from, our institution, Royal LePage, but also from, agents outside of Royal LePage, looking into the Hamilton region.
Okay. And how are you looking to foster those referrals and those relationships?
Yeah, I think a number of them boil down to, quite similarly to, our clients. When you're looking at a referral network, I'm going to say it boils down to those two things as well. You've got to be competent at what you do, and they need to trust you. They need to know once they refer their clients to you, you're meeting at least your expectations, the referring agent's expectations, or exceeding those. So, part of it I find as a team leader right now, I do spend much more time, networking or speaking at certain events, illustrating what we do. And, we're in a really interesting era of selling real estate, whereby most of us are willing to share. The secret sauce isn't exactly what I'm doing. It's me or it's you. Your clients use you because you are who you are.
Right, exactly. Well, that's what this podcast is all about. It's about sharing different experiences, different
Yeah,
perspectives, and everyone's got a little bit of a different way of doing even the same type of thing. So
sure.
even if someone tries to copy myself and the way that I do things or the way that you do things, it'll always come out a little bit different.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Now I have a question about you said that you have developed relationships with developers and
Mhm.
with an investment network. How would you suggest one would go about reaching out to these similar types of people in their areas?
Yeah, I wish that I could say that, by design, when I finished school and got into this business, I had a master action plan. I had a map of exactly where I was going to go. I think one thing that I've got, one of my unique abilities is recognizing opportunity. So, most of these relationships truly came out of a discussion that started like this. And then just the way that I think, whether it's that logical thought process or, you know, um, breathing and eating and sleeping real estate, I'm always thinking, what's our next opportunity here? And, to foster and strengthen a relationship. So, I think the best advice I can give from, are you going to be able to cold call a large institution in your neighborhood? Perhaps. I wouldn't, discourage anybody from that. I think one of the other, unique abilities that I've got, many of us have in this industry, is I've got no limiting belief. I've got no ceiling. I dare you to tell me I can't do something. And it's not that I'm ignorant. It's just that I won't take no for an answer, or I'll never ever give up. I'll keep trying and trying and trying until I figure out how to do it. So I think those are probably two bits of advice. Think about what your niche or your nuance might be. What makes you unique and relatable to perhaps, one of these institutions, or as I refer to as a feeder. But also, don't take no, and by that meaning, don't be arrogant about it. But try something else. If that's not working, then try something else.
So I want to touch on that for a minute. You were talking about that unstoppable kind of limitless mindset, and that's extremely important, and I find quite common in those that succeed. Now, along the similar lines, when you were coming into real estate, did you have a plan B in mind where if this real estate thing doesn't work out, I'll do something else?
Yeah, I wish I could say again, I'd really look brilliant if I could say I had this master action plan, and I've executed everything. Truly it's not being afraid to fail. And I guess, I've heard some interesting sayings. I mean, failure is only realized at the point that you give up. So, maybe it didn't work this way this time, so I'm going to tweak it. I'm never going to give up. So, I didn't have any alternative. I guess initially I thought I wanted to be some form of international developer. I talked about that, but I just really enjoyed the people part of this business. I enjoyed elevating the standard within the industry, creating some of our, internal systems that, what I saw taking place in the marketplace, the level of professionalism in some areas wasn't what I would have expected. So I'll relate back to it. I'll never forget a very influential party in this community said to me, Mike, what are you doing getting into real estate? I mean, you come from this, pedigree of physicians, and he was a physician as well. And I said to him, he said, real estate agents are salespeople, no different from a car salesperson. And my belief, and there's, I know great car salesmen. I mean, I know great lawyers. I also know, the unethical physicians or lawyers. Every profession has them. So, I had the mindset of real estate is most people's largest asset. They need somebody that's a professional that has the capacity to analyze, to guide them, through the sales process, or especially when we're talking about the investment portion of the business, that's really where we needed to elevate our game and make sure that we were giving the right advice. Because as Canadians, most of us think you can't go wrong. Just buy a piece of real estate and you can't go wrong. There's no truth to that. I've seen people go wrong. So getting proper advice, from a competent and trustworthy, professional.
So somebody who's just getting into the business and they think, you know what, I'd really like to work with investors. I want to be that competent professional. What are the things that they should really be looking at in terms of analyzing numbers and understanding the data of their market?
Yeah, I think, when you get into that part of the business, it's certainly a more reliable part of the business. You're consulting and advising people, and they're making decisions based on your guidance. I think from my perspective, you've got to have the analytical capacity. There's all kinds of great courses and great networks out there as well. I was catching up on I'll talk about REIA and our RECO requirements last night. We've got to renew our license every 2 years. And RECO just put out, for the first time I've seen, their multi-residential course. So I want to see what they were educating, salespeople on. So I actually did that course last night and found it, very beneficial. It's a great segue into getting into that part of the business. So there are certainly many resources, great networks out there that provide information. But certainly before you start to advise and consult, somebody, you need to be an expert. And that just comes with time, with experience.
Now, you started as a lone wolf in this business, right? You didn't join a team. When did you then expand, and at what point in your business did you bring on some sort of help, whether it be admin or another realtor?
Yeah, so I see some phenomenal teams out there. Before I get into my experience, I'm often, I hate to say that I'm humbled. People say that frequently, I didn't have any of this by design. I fell into this from hard work and never giving up or just trying to consistently push the boundaries. I had that fear. This is going back to about 2000 and I think 11, bringing on an administrator and taking on their salaries in a business that really has, no stability. And it wasn't until I'd landed an account with one of our developers that, quite often we're closing 12 or 18 months out. So I knew I had some fixed income, for the next 18 months. And that was when I made the decision, or at least had the confidence to make the decision to bring on an assistant. And Shauna Conley, who's one of my now sales partners, started with me as an unlicensed assistant. And, just kind of learned the business from the back end, watched what I did, helped build out some systems. And that was really the catalyst for me. That assistant came out of necessity. There was just too much opportunity in front of me, that I saw I couldn't get back to people in time. I'd hear a call come in that, I realized was a lead, but just didn't have the time to focus on converting. So for me, it started out of necessity, and it started with an assistant. And now Shauna's been with me all those years, and she's one of my senior sales partners. She's in the field. She's a field agent. And last year she did over 52 transactions herself. So, from there, the team's kind of grown into, partnering with other sales partners. And we put them through a fairly extensive recruiting program. So I know some teams form out there, based on different needs. My mindset has always been raising that bar and raising the standard, and not just bringing on a salesperson or a buyer's agent. I refer to all of my people, my sales people, as partners, because that's what they are.
Right, and especially when you're, facing your client, it's a lot easier to hand off to your partner than it is to your subordinate.
Absolutely. I'll say to some clients, and that's one of the challenges that team leaders start to get into, or certainly I did as I went through this process, where, the public wants to deal with the guy, it's the Heddle group, at Mike Heddle, I want to deal with him. You don't. In Brantford, when it comes to a multi-res property, you don't want me doing it. You want Shauna. She knows everything about that marketplace. So that's really whereby, elevating that standard within the team and making sure that we've aligned ourselves with the right salespeople and professionals, but also learning where I need to put off and not chase what some of us refer to as commission breath, chasing a commission check just because, we need the deal.
Exactly. So are you still selling in your team right now?
Yeah, so last year I represented about 40% of the team's transactions, which is a big step for me. I love selling, I love negotiating. It's a part of the business that I really truly enjoy, and I think I'm good at. But I also realize that of roughly we're hoping to do over 300 transactions this year. I can't touch 50% of those. It's just not physically possible as a father and as a husband, to try and have some of that downtime. And really talking about the team and the team out of necessity, part of that came from that work-life balance.
Right, and I wanted to touch on that specifically. So the benefit of having a team is what? I've heard of people that had a team and they're making less money than when they were going solo, but they
Yeah.
have more time to do the things that they want to do. Or,
Yeah.
it could be money driven. What is it for you?
So for me, I'll be fairly frank. It is about profitability. It is money driven. I know what I can earn as an individual, but it forms a balance of a couple of things. We've got a great culture. It's really fun to work in this team and the people that I've surrounded myself with. So culture is really important to me. Bottom line, a profit is really important. This is business. If I'm not making money, I've got two young girls that would love to spend every single moment they could with me. So, I'm at a point where that's a bit of a balance. If it's not profitable, I'll just sit at home with my daughters and strengthen that relationship with them. So standard of service is the big thing. Early on when I'd go on vacation, I'd hand my business off to another agent within the brokerage, and they weren't providing, in my mind anyways, the same standard of service that I was. Whereas under a team unit, we're able to standardize those processes. So whether I show up for a listing presentation or a valuation on the property, all of my sales partners will come down to valuing that property within probably a 0.5% of a tolerance either way. So we've standardized a lot of our processes so that, whether I pick up the file or one of my other sales partners picks up the file, we know exactly where they are. Now, one of our partners is great and fun, and I'm very analytical and to the point. So, this is really where personalities do take over and finding the right fit within the team
So
for the right
it's a
client.
combination there of culture and systems, right? So you guys
Yeah.
have to be in the same mindset and all on the same page, and then you have the systems in order to actually put the actions in place so they get the same experience, right?
Yeah, that's been the biggest challenge I see, for me as well, being a selling agent. And I was a top producing individual agent, sell a lot of homes. Again, the standard of service was a big deciding factor. The lost opportunity was a big deciding factor to form a team. Just having that break, right, with my wife and being able to spend time with the kids and the family, that was a huge deciding factor in terms of building the team. So, those would be certainly the big ones. But I'm not trained. Well, I went to school, I understand business, but I think a lot of salespeople aren't trained to be managers or aren't trained to manage a business and look at a true business plan that remains profitable. And I think that's the big component for those agents that are considering forming a team is why. Is it ego driven? Do you just want to see your name and your sign everywhere? Is it bottom line driven or is it, service driven? And, I like to think for myself that ego didn't form any part of it. We're happy to put any of the sales partners on appointments, depending if it's the right fit for the client. So for me, that level of service is really what I think we're seeing elevated within the industry under some of the team formations.
Now, I think that is a huge challenge out there, and you hit it on the head. A lot of people in our industry, whether they're single agents or even teams I'm seeing, really don't see this as a business and treat it as very specific business plans and execution. It's more just fly by the seat of your pants, and we're making some money and then we're spending some money on marketing, and it's just sort of coming in and out, and they're not really able to keep track of what's going on. So
Yeah,
people can really fall down a pretty deep hole when it
absolutely.
happens. I've seen it happen quite often.
Yeah, I think we all have, and I think that even some of the big national brokerages are really starting to study, the profitability of teams and/or brokerages. I mean, some of the brokerage models are shifting. We're moving into uncharted territory, certainly within the industry. The industry is changing at a rapid pace. Now, there is one thing, I don't know if you've ever heard of Colby assessment. It's a great tool that we use for some of our onboarding processes to make sure that, we understand their MO, their mode of operation, what drives them, and are they the right fit to work within the team or for the position. So we are using some of these DISC personality profiles or Colby assessments to make sure that not only is it the right fit for the team, but is this the right industry for somebody to get into.
So are you taking team members on that are brand spanking new, just getting in the industry?
Yeah, so I'll go back as Shauna, who's one of my senior sales partners. She had just graduated university. She didn't know anything about real estate. She learned the business from an administration side, getting licensed, and then taking time getting out into the field. Our last partner to joined us in April. He'd been in the business for 3 years and bounced around, between a few brokerages, and just felt there was a lack of mentorship. There was a lack of, I think a lot of people join a team because they think there's going to be leads. I think that's something to be to caution. The big brokerages certainly see leads, and some team leaders provide leads. But in my mindset, I think a team needs to provide a value proposition and not just, I'm going to give you 200 leads this month. We really focused on what I'll call the machine in the background. So bringing on that team member, helping work their center of influence through, tested systems and models, so that they become more prevalent in their center of influence. And it's also pretty powerful for a new partner, a new salesperson, to bring on some experience that I've got. So, earlier I talked about my experiences finding it difficult, when I got into the business, friends and family not using me because I was so green. There's great value proposition there for a young salesperson to join a team where they've got access to, all of that experience that some senior team leaders provide.
So it's not just leads, it's support that the team provides, and an environment of really support all around in terms of mentorship, as well as if somebody has to take some time off or they're sick or they have a vacation, they have somebody else, like you said, that knows the same systems and will give the same experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, all quality of life, and we really focus on kind of a net concept. So, our sales partners all earn $100,000 plus net. Much like if I was going to list your home for sale, regardless of my fees, I know I could put more money in your pocket than the guy down the street. So that's really part of our culture and part of our mindset is that value proposition. Not only that we provide our clients in getting them outstanding results, but what we provide to the sales partners, with our systems and our culture and, that downtime that you get, we're still going to have more opportunity for them.
Excellent. Now, let's step back a bit. You had talked about systems several times, and when you first brought on your admin, who's now your senior sales partner, what sort of systems did you put in place? And also, what kind of responsibilities were you then able to shed off so that you could focus on your money-making activities?
Yeah, I think, part of it was just determining what those administrative roles were. So for me, at first, it was, the paper pushing, right? And we adopted some, paperless technologies early on. We were probably one of the early adopters within the brokerage. We were using some electronic signatures on alternative forms. It wasn't up until 2015 that, we were allowed to use electronic signatures on the agreement of purchase and sale or transfer of title, but we could use it in things like, a buyer representation agreement or a listing agreement. So early on, we were an early adopter to technology. Adopting those technologies and building out, what those systems look like. We had built and we had invested in a CRM, before CRMs were really a discussion within the real estate industry. I mean, now there's so many of them and they've advanced so significantly, but we built out, a CRM to make sure that, we could recall when all those deposits were due for, 100 buyers in a new home subdivision, they all deliver 4 deposits. Just scheduling from that alone became a nightmare. So early on, I recognized that we needed some of those systems, that was built into our CRM system, really from early 2011.
Excellent. Now, something just popped in mind that's a little bit of a departure from what we're talking about, but I have a question for you. So regarding working with the developer, I always thought it would be an ideal situation to be able to sit in on a development, help sell the development, and then farm that development afterwards because you already have an established relationship with those people. Is that something that you pursue?
So we do. I'll tell my story. I was approached by this particular builder in 2012. No, 2011, I guess it was, same time frame that Shauna came on. And he approached me and said, I love what you're doing out there. I hear great things about you. Would you take on or consider selling one of our projects? And in my mindset, whether there's any truth to this or not, in my mindset back then, you were either a resale agent or a new homes agent. You didn't do both. And I looked him in the eyes and said, I appreciate the opportunity, but I'm going to have to think about this. And I think he almost fell off his chair because most people would jump at that opportunity. And it wasn't that I wasn't sure about it. It's just that all-in mindset that I had. If I was going to commit to this particular client, I had to be all in. And if it didn't go the way I didn't want it to, it didn't matter. I needed to foresee this all the way through. So not having much experience and not thinking that I didn't want to get into the new build or new home sales really was a big challenge for me. And I took the whole week. I told him I needed a week. I took a week thinking about it. When I sat back down with him, I saw upside opportunity. So growth for a team, that stability, and then the capacity to be able to farm one of those projects for sure.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I always thought that was a fantastic opportunity if you could get it to really develop a business that's long term.
Yeah.
Right at the beginning, usually it's first-time home buyers, not always, but usually it's first-time home buyers that approach development. So I just thought it's a great way to develop. Anyway, just a side thought.
There's some great opportunity. I mean, the other thing is quite often some of these developers want a huge time commitment from their salespeople. Right. They want to sit on site, 6 or 7 days a week. That becomes very difficult to have a resale business where this particular client, recognized that selling resale real estate was a big part of my business, and he didn't have any objections with that. So, finding the right partners is key. So, to contribute to our success, I can't say I secured a developer and that was it. I had an amazing developer that appreciated the value that I brought to them, but also appreciated my business and wants to see me continue to succeed. So that's important as well.
And building the team out. So once you had your admin in, at what point did you then bring on assistance for the sales side?
So I'll walk through that transition. Shauna, was bright and energetic and great with people, and I could see that there was a self-fulfilling, I guess, part of being in that role was limited. So, I recognized that she didn't want to sit behind a computer 9 to 5, that she liked being out and really assessing what her needs and providing her with opportunity. I sat with her and said, where do you want to take your career? And she said, I think I want to get into selling, and I want to encourage that and still do. So we then partnered with a salesperson that had some experience with a developer. So that was my second, I guess I'll call it onboarding with a sales partner. They had some experience with this particular builder, and she had been after me for a year wanting to join the team. And it was just really a nice marriage, I'll call it. She had great experience. She'd been in the industry for 30 years. So there was a nice fit, and she just really fit the team. There were some economies of scale, to adopting her into the team. And it was at that time that we also brought in and trained a new administrator to just pick up. There were now 3 of us out selling. So making sure that those systems that we had built and were in place were continuously being honored.
Now, throughout this process, were you doing any kind of coaching or seeking outside help in terms of how to onboard people and get these systems developed?
I wish I was that strategic. There's a great saying that I've often found interesting. The harder you work, the luckier you tend to get, or at least it appears that way. So the answer there is no. I started coaching in 2015, so I've been coaching now for, I guess, 4 years. But it wasn't until, so my experiences, and I like telling this story because I find it pretty interesting, as we got, I guess, nominated or made it into Royal LePage's National Chairman's Club, which represents the top 1%. I had no idea what this club was. And I don't want to say I didn't care. I was just naive. I'd never done any networking. I'd nenever really cared too much about the awards or the recognition. And my broker approached me and said, "Amazing! I got amazing news. You're one of the top 170 agents in Canada." And I was at a real kind of breaking point. I think I didn't have much of a model aside from my business training to really look at the team, but I didn't have a model to implement. And one of the benefits of being awarded this club is an invite to a retreat. And that particular year, they held the retreat in Italy. Pretty amazing, right? To be able to go away from work in Italy and spend a week with the top agents in the country. And I didn't know any of them. And that's not like my nature, to go to another country not knowing anybody and spend a week with people. I didn't know what I was in for, but I knew that I would find some amazing people that had built out some amazing systems. And what truly surprised me, these people blew away, any expectations that I had, just how humble they were. I thought there'd be a lot of egos that kind of traditionally fall within this industry. Didn't see any of that. The willingness to share was amazing. It's something that I'd never seen within this industry. So that was really a big eye opener in my business for two reasons. One, it was at that time advised, or I'd spoken with a few parties that had said you really should try coaching. So that was a big game changer for me. And then the second was the byproduct of networking. So early on when I talked about the different feeders of our business, last year about 20% of our business came from referrals. There's a huge amount of dollars that went out last year in referral fees. And that's an amazing way that I think I've built this business. It's a variable cost. I will drive around the city and not see any of our billboards or any of our, fixed cost advertising that I see in many marketplaces. We probably absorb comparable in terms of that marketing cost, but we pay it out in referral, which as a business owner is really healthy for me and really safe for me as well. If we don't transact, we don't have that cost on I'll call it marketing. So the second thing that came out of that was really how much potential business, and that wasn't my intent, but how much potential business, and it came to fruition, how much business came out from just networking and sharing ideas and surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals. So for me, that was a true game changer. I look back to 2015 and wonder what my career would look like if I had not gone on that retreat. And there's no way it would look like the work-life balance that I have right now, or even the way that we're able to attract top talent in some of our sales partners with some of these other affiliations.
Excellent, excellent. So let's take a step into an alternate universe for a minute, if you would. And let's imagine that you're transplanted into another city in North America, or perhaps you have a nephew in another city in North America, and they're getting into real estate, and they have to start from ground zero. What kind of advice would you give them to really get off and running?
That's tough for me to give, and I'll just share my experiences. I'm a Hamiltonian. I grew up, and for many years, most people didn't like to say they were from Hamilton. You thought you'd have a third eye or something like that. I grew up in Hamilton or Dundas. I went to school, university in Hamilton. I have a huge center of influence. And I guess from that standpoint, to be a team leader and to be involved in this business, that's one of those things that's probably, fostered that. I recognize that there's a real strong challenge moving into a different marketplace. I don't think with my systems I would be as nearly successful as I am if I just moved into Sudbury. Now, having said that, the advice. So I've got a couple of sales partners on the team. I'll defer back to Shauna, who's not from the region. She didn't grow up here. Her center of influence when she joined the team was one, maybe two, her parents. So, we've helped foster that. I mean, our compensation structure favors agents to build out their center of influence. But here's an agent or a sales partner that was involved in, the last 2 years, over 50 transactions in a marketplace that she's got no center of influence. That's really rewarding as a team owner and gratifying to say, I thought I could execute this, and we did. So I think some of the advice I would give for somebody that's in a region that they don't have a huge center of influence, I see massive power behind affiliating yourself with a team that does have, those systems in place.
Excellent. So any parting words of wisdom or advice for those out there that are either just getting into the business or perhaps struggling?
I think, probably a couple. Have fun with this. I can understand, we've seen changes in markets. I know this can be a really stressful business. It can consume your time if you allow it to. The advice I would give is try to structure your business. Have fun. You need to be enjoying it. If you're not enjoying it, and if you're chasing commission, that's the other point. I referred to commission breath. Don't make this about the money or about the commission. Make it about the client experience or the guidance that you want to give your clients. And I think the byproduct of that will be success.
Mike, thanks. Appreciate the insight. Appreciate you taking the time.
Fantastic. Thank you for having me. I hope I gave some good insight to all of your listeners, and it's been an honor.
Absolutely. So remind everybody where you're located and how to get in touch if they want to send you some referrals.
Yeah, sounds good. So we're in Hamilton. We cover the greater Hamilton area. Our website is easy. It's liveinhamilton.ca. Feel free to reach out, even if it's not about referrals. If you want to pick my brain, I'm part of that agent category that loves to share and loves to network and loves to just share ideas. So if any of your listeners just want to reach out and have a quick chat, I'm happy to.
Now, Hamilton, for those that aren't in Canada, is in Southern Ontario.
Yeah, so we're just outside of Toronto. So almost everyone knows where Toronto's located. We're about 45 minutes west of Toronto. If you're looking at a map, we're right at the western part of Lake Ontario. So we're about halfway between Niagara Falls and Toronto. We're known as the waterfall community. We've got over 100 waterfalls in Hamilton. It's no longer a steel town. So for those of you that know us from the Ticats or think of us as manufacturing, we've got some great communities in Hamilton.
And great, some investment opportunities as well, right? Because
some amazing. Yeah, absolutely. That's it's for the last decade, Hamilton has been seen based on the underlying economic drivers. So things like average income, net migration. We're seeing people from Toronto move out of Toronto. So average income, net migration. We're seeing the effects of transportation into the greater Toronto area. So for the last decade, many economists have forecasted Hamilton to be one of the best markets in the country to invest in. And in fact, last year, it came out as top 3 cities in Canada to invest in, based on underlying economics. So if you want to have a chat, we didn't talk much about the investment side of this. If any of your listeners are interested, we've got some great reports that we'd be happy to share.
Fantastic. Thanks so much again for taking the time, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Likewise. Excellent. Thanks for having me. Bye now.
Hey, everybody out there in podcast land. I just wanted to say thank you so much. I truly appreciate you for your support and for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share this all over social media, and especially share it with a realtor that you know that might be having a difficult time finding their own path to success. I'll see you on the next episode.